There is a moment, somewhere out in the open ocean, far from the sight of any coast, where something extraordinary happens. A school of yellowfin tuna, some of the fastest and most powerful fish in the sea, begins driving a ball of smaller fish toward the surface. And then, from below and from the sides, something else arrives. Dolphins, not competing with the tuna, not fleeing from them, working alongside them, in what appears to be a coordinated, deliberate, almost tactical assault on the fish in between. The prey has nowhere to go. Above is air, below are tuna. On the sides are dolphins, and the result is a churning, frenzied, breathtaking explosion of feeding that can stretch for hundreds of meters across the surface of the ocean. If you have never seen this before, you need to stop what you are doing and pay attention, because what happens between dolphins and tuna in the open ocean is one of the most fascinating and still deeply puzzling phenomena in all of animal behavior. Scientists have been watching it for decades. Fishermen have been following it for longer than that. And yet, no one can fully agree on why it happens, how it evolved, or what it actually means for either species. Before we go any further, if this is the kind of story that gets your blood moving, if you find yourself genuinely amazed by what animals are capable of, then hit that subscribe button right now. There is so much more where this came from, and you do not want to miss a single piece of it. Now, let us get into the ocean, because the story of dolphins and tuna is not a simple one, and the further you look into it, the stranger and more remarkable it becomes. The open ocean, the part of the sea far from any coastline, is one of the most hostile environments on the planet. There is no shelter here, no reef to hide behind, no rock to duck under. It is an almost featureless blue desert stretching in every direction to the horizon. For small fish, a school of sardines or anchovies or herrings, surviving in this desert requires one main strategy: stay together, move as one enormous body. Confuse predators with sheer numbers. The flashing, shifting, pulsing mass of a bait ball is the result of millions of years of evolution, a biological defense mechanism that has kept small schooling fish alive in the open ocean since long before anything even resembling a dolphin or a tuna had evolved. But the ocean evolved its own countermeasures, and two of them, tuna and dolphins, are unlike almost anything else in the sea. Yellowfin tuna are extraordinary animals. Built like torpedoes wrapped in iridescent blue and silver, they are capable of bursts of speed exceeding 60 kilometers per hour. Their bodies are warm, partially, which is unusual for a fish, allowing their muscles to operate at peak efficiency even in cooler water. They are visual hunters, built to pursue fast-moving prey at high speed, and they are relentless. A school of yellowfin tuna on the hunt is a machine of extraordinary efficiency. Spinner dolphins, spotted dolphins, and common dolphins, the species most often found hunting alongside tuna in the eastern tropical Pacific and elsewhere, are something else entirely. Where tuna are solitary thinkers, dolphins are social architects. They communicate constantly. They coordinate. They appear to plan. Their echolocation allows them to track prey in 3 dimensions with a precision that no visual predator can match. They can locate a single fish in the dark, through murky water, at distances that would be invisible to any eye, and they are fast. Not quite as fast as tuna, but fast enough, and far more maneuverable. When these two kinds of animals hunt together, the result is something that neither could achieve as effectively on its own. The typical sequence begins with dolphins locating prey. Their sonar sweeps through the water, bouncing off the dense mass of a school of small fish far below. The dolphins descend. They begin circling the school, sweeping inward, using their bodies and their sound to compress the fish into a tighter and tighter ball. Meanwhile, the tuna arrive. Nobody is entirely sure how the tuna know to come. The most widely accepted explanation is that the tuna are following the dolphins, literally tracking the pod from below or from a distance, watching for signs of a feeding event. Tuna have exceptional eyesight. They can spot the splashing and surface disturbance of dolphins long before anything else is visible, and they have learned, over generations of evolutionary time, that where dolphins hunt, there is food. The dolphins drive the bait ball upward. The tuna hit it from below. The prey is compressed from every direction simultaneously, and the carnage that follows is spectacular. Birds arrive at the surface, plunging into the frenzy from above. The water turns white with the thrashing of fins and the spray of panicked fish exploding in every direction. And for a few extraordinary minutes, the ocean seems to come alive in a way that is almost impossible to believe. Then it is over. The fish are gone. The dolphins regroup, clicking and whistling to one another. The tuna dissolve back into the blue, and the whole thing ends as suddenly as it began. Scientists first began documenting this behavior systematically in the 1960s and 1970s, largely because of the tuna fishing industry. Fishermen in the eastern tropical Pacific had known for decades that the best way to find yellowfin tuna was to find dolphins first. Tuna and dolphins associate so reliably in that part of the ocean that the tuna fishery built its entire strategy around it. Fishing boats would chase dolphin pods across the open sea, knowing that the yellowfin were almost certainly traveling beneath them, and then set enormous purse seine nets around the entire group. The result was catastrophic for dolphins. Millions of dolphins were killed as bycatch in the eastern tropical Pacific tuna fishery between the 1960s and the 1990s. An ecological disaster that eventually forced the industry to change its practices and gave birth to the dolphin-safe tuna labeling campaign that many people recognize today. But here is the thing. Even as scientists were documenting the disaster unfolding for dolphins in these nets, they were also grappling with a question that turned out to be surprisingly difficult to answer. Why were the dolphins there with the tuna in the first place? What was actually going on between these two very different species? Was this a true cooperative hunt? A case of one species exploiting the behavior of another? Something else entirely? And the deeper they looked, the more complicated the picture became. Let us start with what we can say with confidence. The association between dolphins and yellowfin tuna in the eastern tropical Pacific is not random, and it is not occasional. It is consistent, predictable, and widespread. In certain parts of the ocean at certain times of year, the majority of yellowfin tuna schools are found in association with dolphin pods. The association is so reliable that fisheries scientists use it as a proxy for tuna distribution. The two species are genuinely tracking each other across hundreds of kilometers of open ocean. The most common species involved are spotted dolphins and spinner dolphins on the dolphin side, and yellowfin tuna on the fish side. And the association is highly specific. Striped dolphins, which also live in the eastern tropical Pacific, do not associate with yellowfin tuna in the same way. Neither do many other oceanic dolphin species. There is something particular about the combination of spotted and spinner dolphins with yellowfin that makes this specific partnership work. The question that has driven researchers to distraction for decades is whether the relationship is mutually beneficial, meaning both species gain from it, or whether it is essentially a case of one species taking advantage of the other. The argument for mutual benefit goes something like this. Dolphins are superior prey locators. Their echolocation is vastly more sensitive than anything tuna possess. Dolphins can find fish in the dark, find fish at depth, find fish through murky water. When dolphins locate a school of prey and begin herding it, the tuna benefit from the dolphin's superior detection and herding abilities. They ride the coattails of the dolphin hunt and get access to prey they might not have found or captured as efficiently on their own. In return, the dolphins benefit from the tuna. Yellowfin tuna, driving at a school of prey from below at high speed, act as a wall, a barrier that forces the prey upward. This upward compression is something dolphins cannot easily create on their own, because dolphins are air breathers and cannot sustain pressure drives from depth for extended periods. The tuna, which need not surface to breathe, can maintain sustained pressure from below, keeping the bait ball compressed against the surface, where the dolphins can feed more effectively. In this reading of events, the partnership is a genuine alliance of complementary abilities. The dolphins provide superior detection and lateral herding. The tuna provides sustained vertical compression. Together they create feeding conditions that neither could produce as efficiently alone. It is a beautiful and elegant hypothesis, and it is at least partially supported by evidence. Studies of feeding success rates suggest that both dolphins and tuna do feed more effectively when together than when hunting independently. Bait balls formed during mixed species hunts tend to be denser and more tightly compressed than those formed by either species alone. The prey has fewer escape options when attacked simultaneously from multiple directions and multiple depths. But then you start pulling at the threads, and things get complicated. One of the persistent problems with the mutual benefit hypothesis is that the relationship does not always appear symmetrical. In many observed hunting events, it is the dolphins that do the bulk of the work. The dolphins locate the prey, initiate the herding, drive the bait ball to the surface. The tuna arrive later, often after the hard work has already been done, and they feed on the concentrated prey that the dolphins have already assembled. In these cases, it is hard to see what the dolphins are actually getting from the tuna that they could not get on their own. The tuna appear to be benefiting more than the dolphins, perhaps significantly more. There is also the question of whether the dolphins actually want the tuna around. Observations from the eastern tropical Pacific suggest that dolphins do not actively recruit tuna. They do not appear to signal or call to tuna when a feeding event begins. The tuna simply arrive, drawn by the visual and acoustic commotion of a dolphin hunt already in progress. The dolphins appear indifferent to the tuna at best, and in some cases, slightly inconvenienced by them. Large schools of tuna competing for the same prey as dolphins can deplete the bait ball faster, leaving less food for everyone. This has led some researchers to argue that the relationship is not truly cooperative at all, but rather a form of commensalism, in which one species benefits and the other is neither helped nor harmed, or even a subtle form of parasitism, in which the tuna consistently exploit the dolphin's hunting efforts while contributing relatively little in return. Then there is a third possibility, which is perhaps the most interesting of all. The relationship may not be primarily about food at all, or at least not entirely. Consider the open ocean environment. There are no trees here, no rock formations, no complex topography of any kind. For a dolphin pod traveling through this vast, featureless blue, a school of large tuna moving below them might represent something else entirely. It might represent safety. Here is the logic. The main predators of dolphins in the open ocean, sharks and orcas primarily, are less likely to attack a large, mixed aggregation of fast and powerful animals than they are to attack a small, isolated group. A dolphin pod traveling alone is vulnerable. A dolphin pod traveling above a school of hundreds of large, agile, powerful tuna is something quite different. The sheer density of moving bodies, the acoustic chaos of tuna swimming at speed, the overall size of the aggregation, all of these things may deter predators in ways that benefit the dolphins directly. In this reading, the dolphins may be using the tuna as a kind of moving shield, a school of large and capable animals that makes the pod less attractive as a target. The dolphins tolerate the tuna feeding alongside them because the security benefit of having the tuna present outweighs the cost of sharing prey. This hypothesis gets more interesting when you look at where and when the tuna-dolphin association is most common. It is most prevalent in the eastern tropical Pacific, a region that is oceanographically unusual. The surface layer of warm water in this part of the ocean is relatively shallow. Below it is a thermocline, a sharp boundary between warm surface water and much colder, oxygen-poor water beneath. Many small fish are constrained to the warm surface layer. They cannot easily escape downward through the thermocline because the cold water below is hostile to them. This means that a bait ball attack near the thermocline has almost nowhere to go. Down means death, up means air. The only option is horizontal. But it also means something else. The oxygen-poor water below the thermocline limits the depth at which many predators, including sharks, can comfortably operate. Sharks and other large predators are somewhat constrained to the surface layer, just like the prey. This creates a more dangerous environment for dolphins than they might face in other parts of the ocean, where predators have more space to operate in and where prey can escape to greater depths, making hunts less predictable and aggregations less dense. In an environment where predation pressure is high and prey is concentrated near the surface, the security benefit of traveling with a large school of powerful tuna might be particularly valuable, which could explain why the association is so much more common and more consistent in the eastern tropical Pacific than in other ocean regions where dolphins and tuna co-occur but associate less reliably. None of these hypotheses has been definitively proven. The honest position, the one that the best researchers in this field will give you, is that we still do not fully understand why dolphins and tuna associate the way they do. The relationship is almost certainly more complex than any single explanation can capture. It probably varies by location, by season, by species composition, by prey availability, and possibly by the individual histories and learned behaviors of the specific pods and schools involved. And this is where things get genuinely astonishing. Because the deeper you look at dolphin behavior in general, the more you realize that what is happening between dolphins and tuna may not simply be an evolved instinct. It may, at least in part, be something that individual dolphins learn. Dolphins are among the most cognitively sophisticated animals on the planet. Their brains are large, complex, and structured in ways that support advanced social learning, communication, and what researchers increasingly describe as culture. Different dolphin populations in different parts of the world have been documented using different hunting techniques, different tools, different strategies, and different patterns of association with other species. And these differences are not genetic, they are learned, passed down from mothers to offspring, and spread laterally through social groups, in the same way that human cultures spread skills and knowledge. In Shark Bay, Western Australia, a population of bottlenose dolphins has learned to use marine sponges as foraging tools, carrying them on their rostrums to protect against the abrasion of the seafloor as they probe for fish. This behavior is not found in other bottlenose dolphin populations. It is specific to a subset of individuals in Shark Bay, and it appears to have spread through the population via social learning, with mothers teaching daughters the technique. In different parts of the world, dolphins use completely different hunting strategies. Some strand themselves temporarily on beaches to catch fish. Others use a technique called strand feeding along the coasts of South Carolina, where they intentionally beach prey fish on mudflats and then retrieve them. Others herd fish into shallow bays using coordinated tail slaps that stun the prey. These are not instincts. They are innovations that spread through populations via learning. If dolphins can learn to use sponge tools and to strand feed and to coordinate complex herding strategies, they can certainly learn that following tuna is a productive strategy. And individual dolphins that grow up in pods that regularly associate with tuna would have the opportunity to learn from birth that tuna and food go together, that the presence of tuna below or nearby is a signal worth paying attention to. This raises a possibility that is both exciting and difficult to test. The tuna-dolphin association may be, in part, a cultural behavior in dolphin populations. It may be something that pods learn and transmit, rather than something that every dolphin does instinctively. If this is true, then the association might be stronger in some populations than others, variable in its form and frequency, and potentially changing over time as dolphin cultures evolve. There is some circumstantial evidence for this. The tuna-dolphin association is particularly strong and consistent in the eastern tropical Pacific, where it has been observed and documented for generations of both fishermen and scientists. Dolphin pods in this region appear to have developed a particularly deep and reliable relationship with yellowfin tuna. Whether this reflects ecological pressure, cultural learning, or both is not currently possible to say with certainty. Now let us look at this from the other direction. What, if anything, are the tuna doing? Fish are generally not thought of as social learners in the way that dolphins are. The popular image of a fish is an animal operating on pure instinct, responding to sensory stimuli without anything approaching deliberate planning or learning. But this image is increasingly out of date. Fish, particularly large, long-lived, socially complex fish like tuna, are more capable than we have traditionally given them credit for. Yellowfin tuna are schooling animals that travel enormous distances across the open ocean. A school of yellowfin might range across thousands of kilometers of Pacific over the course of a year, following temperature gradients, prey concentrations, and oceanographic features like current boundaries and upwelling zones. Tracking these features requires some form of environmental memory and learning. Tuna can remember where they found prey before. They can return to productive areas. They adjust their behavior in response to past experience. Whether tuna actively learn that dolphin pods are worth following, or whether following dolphins is a hardwired response to certain acoustic or visual stimuli that dolphins happen to produce, is a genuinely open question. But the consistency and specificity of the association with spotted and spinner dolphins in particular, rather than other dolphin species, suggests that something more than random opportunism is going on. Some researchers have proposed that the association is an evolutionarily stable strategy, meaning that it has been maintained over long periods of evolutionary time, because it provides consistent enough benefits to both parties that natural selection has shaped both species' behavior to facilitate it. In this view, the tuna-dolphin partnership is not a recent development or a learned cultural behavior, but a genuinely ancient ecological relationship, one that has been shaping the evolution of both species for potentially millions of years. The evidence for this is largely circumstantial. The association is too consistent and too widespread to be purely accidental. The specific species combinations that associate most strongly, spotted and spinner dolphins with yellowfin tuna, suggest that there has been some degree of coevolution, with the behaviors of each species adapting to take advantage of the other. The fact that yellowfin tuna respond to dolphin behavior in ways that appear consistent across different ocean regions suggests a level of specificity that goes beyond simple opportunism. But whether this represents genuine coevolution, with each species' genes shaped by the presence and behavior of the other, or whether it represents parallel learning in populations that have existed in close proximity for long enough that both species have independently arrived at similar solutions, is almost impossible to determine from behavioral observation alone. What we can say with confidence is this: the tuna-dolphin association has real and significant consequences for both species, and for the ecosystems they inhabit. When dolphins and tuna hunt together, they are far more effective predators than either species alone. Their combined hunting creates feeding frenzies of extraordinary intensity that concentrate prey, attract other predators, and generate a cascade of ecological effects rippling through the entire food web. Birds from enormous distances are drawn to these events. Larger sharks follow the scent of activity. Whale sharks, the gentle giants that cruise the surface filtering whatever the ocean provides, sometimes appear at the edges of these events, hoovering up the scraps. The tuna-dolphin feeding event is not just a meal for two species. It is an ecological spectacle that sustains dozens. The scale of this can be difficult to appreciate from a distance, but imagine what it looks like from the center of it. You are underwater, inside a feeding event. Above you, the surface is churning white, broken by diving birds, leaping dolphins, and the thrashing of thousands of small fish exploding in every direction. Below you, the water is full of the streaking silver shapes of tuna, moving at a speed that seems impossible for anything that large, banking and turning with extraordinary precision, each one a missile aimed at the densest part of the school. Around you, dolphins are everywhere, their echolocation clicks filling the water with sound, each individual communicating constantly, adjusting, coordinating, responding to signals too rapid and too complex for any human observer to fully process. In the middle of all of this are the prey: sardines, anchovies, mackerel, animals small enough to hold in one hand, animals whose entire defense strategy, moving as one, flashing in coordinated waves, confusing individual predators with sheer numbers, is being comprehensively defeated by the combined intelligence and speed of the animals attacking them from every direction simultaneously. It lasts minutes, sometimes only seconds at its most intense, and then it is over. The ecological importance of events like this extends far beyond the immediate feeding. The waste products of these feeding events, the scraps, the scales, the biological material that settles through the water column after a feeding frenzy, provide nutrition for organisms throughout the water column, including deep-sea creatures that never come within hundreds of meters of the surface. The concentration of biological activity in these events creates temporary oases of productivity in what would otherwise be a biological desert. There is also a significant implication for the distribution of nutrients across the open ocean. Dolphins defecate near the surface, releasing nutrients into the well-lit surface layer where phytoplankton can use them. Tuna do much the same. By concentrating feeding activity and then spreading nutrients broadly as they travel, these species act as living nutrient cycling machines, moving biological material around the ocean in ways that have measurable effects on primary productivity at the base of the food web. The ocean is not a passive backdrop. It is a system of extraordinary complexity, in which every species is connected to every other species, in ways that are rarely obvious and almost never simple. The tuna-dolphin partnership is a window into this complexity, a visible expression of ecological relationships that operate across vast distances and evolutionary timescales that dwarf any human perspective. Now, let us talk about the humans in this story. Because the human relationship with the tuna-dolphin association is complicated, significant, and not entirely flattering. The eastern tropical Pacific tuna fishery is one of the most productive in the world. Yellowfin tuna from this region supply an enormous fraction of the global canned tuna market. And for decades, the primary method of catching those tuna was to chase and encircle dolphin pods with purse seine nets, because where the dolphins were, the tuna were almost certainly below them. The dolphin mortality that resulted from this practice was staggering. Between 1959 and 1972, it is estimated that more than 4 million dolphins were killed in the eastern tropical Pacific tuna fishery. The population of spotted dolphins in the region, one of the primary species in the Tuna Association, was reduced by perhaps 80%. The spinner dolphin population suffered similarly catastrophic declines. These numbers are almost impossible to comprehend. Millions of animals, many of them members of tight-knit social groups with sophisticated cultures, capable of deep social bonds, communication, and learning, killed as a byproduct of catching a different species entirely. The dolphins were not the target. They were simply in the way, and the fishery did not, initially, have any mechanism for letting them out. The story of how this changed is its own remarkable chapter in the history of conservation. Public pressure, driven in large part by footage of dolphin deaths in tuna nets that began circulating in the early 1970s, created a political demand for change that eventually resulted in the Marine Mammal Protection Act in the United States, international agreements on dolphin bycatch reduction, and the Dolphin Safe Tuna Labeling Program that modified consumer behavior around the world. The tuna fishing industry was forced to adapt. New net designs were developed that allowed dolphins to escape. New fishing practices were implemented that reduced the frequency of dolphin encirclement, and alternative methods of catching tuna, using floating fish aggregating devices rather than dolphin pods as target indicators, were developed and widely adopted. But this is where the story takes an uncomfortable turn, because the alternative fishing methods that were developed to protect dolphins have created their own ecological problems. Fish aggregating devices, known as FADs, are floating objects, often buoys or rafts of debris, that attract a wide variety of marine life. Tuna gather around them, so do juvenile fish of many species, so do sharks, sea turtles, and other large marine animals. And when a purse seine is set around a FAD, it catches everything that is gathered there, not just the target tuna but every species present. The dolphin-safe tuna that replaced the dolphin-associated tuna carries with it a bycatch profile that includes large quantities of juvenile big-eye and skipjack tuna, as well as sea turtles, sharks, manta rays, and other non-target species. In some analyses, the total ecological damage caused by FAD fishing exceeds the damage caused by dolphin-associated fishing, even accounting for the devastating dolphin bycatch of the earlier era. The scientists and conservationists who have grappled with this question are not in full agreement about what the right answer is. Some argue that the protection of dolphins, as complex, socially sophisticated, long-lived mammals with cultures and social structures that take decades to rebuild after population crashes, should remain the paramount concern. Others argue that the ecological footprint of modern FAD fishing is broader and in some ways more damaging than the dolphin-associated fishing it replaced. What is clear is that the human relationship with the Tuna-Dolphin Association, which began with fishermen simply following dolphins to find fish, has evolved into something of extraordinary complexity, with consequences that reach across the entire marine food web and involve regulatory frameworks, consumer behavior, international law, and some of the most contentious debates in fisheries management. And underlying all of it is the basic reality that the tuna-dolphin relationship exists, that these two very different species, a fish and a mammal, evolved separately over different timescales, representing completely different branches of the tree of life, have arrived at a behavioral relationship that links their fates so closely that you cannot manage one without affecting the other. Let us return to the ocean. Let us go back to that moment in the open blue, far from any coast, where the dolphins are diving and the water is beginning to boil. There is something happening here that goes beyond the immediate spectacle of predators and prey. What you are watching is evolution in action. You are watching the product of millions of years of selection pressure, in which the ancestors of both dolphins and tuna that were better at using each other, better at locating each other, better at exploiting the behavioral patterns of the other species, survived and reproduced at higher rates than those that did not. The behavior you are watching is written into the biology of both species by the accumulated weight of all those generations, all those hunts, all those feeding events over geological time. And yet it is not just biology, it is also, in some sense, knowledge. The dolphin pod that is hunting today learned something from the pod that hunted before it. The young dolphins in this pod are watching, processing, filing away the patterns they see. They are learning which behaviors produce food, which associations are worth maintaining, which acoustic signals mean the tuna are arriving. They are, in their own way, building a cultural understanding of the ocean and the other species they share it with. This is what makes the tuna-dolphin relationship so genuinely fascinating. It sits at the intersection of evolution and culture, instinct and learning, ecology and behavior, at a point where the boundaries between all of these things become blurred and uncertain. It is a relationship that challenges our categories and our assumptions about what animals are capable of and how complex the relationships between different species can become. There are other examples of cross-species hunting partnerships in the animal world. The relationship between grouper fish and moray eels in coral reefs has been documented extensively. The grouper, a pursuit predator built for speed in open water, signals to the moray, a predator that excels at chasing prey into crevices, using a distinctive head-shaking gesture that the moray recognizes and responds to. Together, they flush prey from hiding places and chase it across open ground in sequences that neither species could execute as effectively alone. The relationship between honey-guide birds and honey badgers, and in some cases humans, in Africa, is another remarkable example. The honey guide leads its partner to bee nests it has located, following and calling persistently until the partner follows. The partner breaks open the nest, and both share the bounty. This is a genuine partnership, and the human version of it has been maintained for thousands of years, with specific calls and responses developed between local human communities and the birds in their area. But the tuna-dolphin relationship is different from both of these, in important ways. The coral reef partnership between grouper and moray eels involves animals of comparable cognitive complexity and with an obvious means of direct communication, the visual signals that grouper use. The honey guide partnership involves an exceptionally intelligent bird with an evolved signaling system and partners that are capable of responding to and even actively recruiting the bird. The tuna-dolphin relationship, by contrast, involves a mammal of high intelligence on one side and a fish on the other. It involves species that are not interacting through any obvious direct communication system. There is no signaling between dolphins and tuna, no apparent recognition, no evidence that either species is making deliberate decisions about the other, based on individual recognition or social relationship. And yet the association is consistent, productive, and apparently maintained across populations over long periods of time. This is what makes it so perplexing and so interesting. It is a relationship that works without any of the obvious mechanisms we associate with cooperative behavior. It does not require communication between species. It does not require individual recognition. It does not even necessarily require that either species has any awareness of the other's role in the partnership. It could, in principle, be maintained entirely through each species simply following its own evolved behavioral rules, which happen to produce a cooperative outcome when the two sets of rules interact. This is actually a general principle in ecology, one that applies far more broadly than just the tuna-dolphin case. Many ecological relationships that look cooperative or coordinated are actually the product of individual species following simple rules that produce complex emergent outcomes at the population level. The schooling behavior of fish, for example, emerges from very simple rules followed by each individual fish. No fish is trying to create a school. Each fish is simply responding to the positions and movements of its immediate neighbors according to a set of evolved behavioral rules. The school as a whole emerges from these individual responses without any central coordination. Could the tuna-dolphin partnership be something similar? Two species following their own individual behavioral rules, in which dolphins are disposed to pursue and herd concentrations of prey, and tuna are disposed to follow concentrations of activity and feeding commotion, and the interaction of these two independent sets of rules producing what looks, from the outside, like a coordinated cooperative hunt? The answer is almost certainly yes, in part. But the question is whether this is the whole story, whether the simplest version of the explanation, two species following their own rules and accidentally producing cooperative outcomes, is sufficient to explain the consistency and specificity of the relationship, or whether something more complex is also going on. The evidence suggests that something more is happening. The specificity of the association, with particular dolphin species associating preferentially with particular tuna species in particular ocean regions, is difficult to explain purely through simple rule following. It suggests that there has been some evolutionary tuning of each species' behavioral rules in response to the presence and behavior of the other. And the evidence for cultural learning in dolphin populations, combined with the high cognitive capacity of dolphins, suggests that individual learning and cultural transmission may also be playing a role, at least on the dolphin side. The honest conclusion is that the tuna-dolphin relationship is probably maintained by a combination of evolved behavioral dispositions, individual learning, cultural transmission, and ecological context, with the relative importance of each of these factors varying across populations and ocean regions. It is not a simple relationship, and it does not have a simple explanation. And perhaps that is exactly the point. The ocean is not simple. Life is not simple. The relationships between species that have coexisted and co-evolved over millions of years are never simple. They are layered, complex, contextual, and often deeply surprising. Every time we think we have understood one of them, we discover another layer of complexity we had not anticipated. The tuna-dolphin relationship has been studied for more than half a century. It has been documented in the eastern tropical Pacific, in the Atlantic, in the Indian Ocean, and in the Mediterranean. It has been the subject of hundreds of scientific papers, the focus of major research programs, and the trigger for some of the most significant changes in fisheries management in history. And scientists still cannot fully explain it. That is not a failure of science. That is a testament to the depth and complexity of the natural world. It is a reminder that the ocean contains relationships and behaviors and ecological dynamics that we are only beginning to understand, and that every answer we find tends to reveal three more questions lurking behind it. There is something deeply humbling about that, and something deeply thrilling. Because it means the ocean still has secrets. It means that there are things happening out there, in the blue water far from any shore, that no human being has yet fully understood. The dolphins and the tuna are doing something together that has been happening for millions of years, and we are still trying to figure out exactly what it is. Think about that for a moment. Two species, separated by hundreds of millions of years of evolutionary history, a mammal and a fish, meeting in the featureless expanse of the open ocean and doing something together that neither fully does alone. Something that has sustained populations of both species, shaped the ecology of entire ocean regions, driven the evolution of both predators and prey, and frustrated the best efforts of some of the world's most talented marine biologists to fully explain. The spinner dolphins wheel away to the east, their bodies arcing out of the water in the long chains of spinning leaps that give them their name. Below them, just visible as dark shapes in the translucent blue, the tuna follow. Moving together through an ocean that connects every shore on the planet, and that contains more life, more complexity, and more mystery than any of us have yet begun to fully appreciate. The sun drops toward the horizon. The feeding event is over, at least for now. But somewhere, on the far side of this ocean, in a patch of warm surface water where a thermocline traps small fish near the surface and dolphins are already beginning to dive, it is starting again. As it has been starting, over and over, in ocean after ocean, for longer than our species has existed. We watch. We measure. We theorize. We argue. We study the acoustic signals and the swimming paths and the net configurations and the population sizes and the prey distributions and the seasonal patterns and the long-term trends. We fill journals with data and papers with hypotheses and conferences with debate. And the dolphins and the tuna do what they have always done, in the open blue, beyond the reach of any certainty, teaching us, slowly and incompletely and with great patience, that the world is always stranger and richer and more wonderful than anything we have managed to understand so far. That is the ocean. That is what is out there. And the moment we think we have figured it out is the moment we have stopped paying attention. Subscribe, because there is so much more of this. So much more of the strange and the beautiful and the not quite explainable out there in a world that is still full of things we do not yet understand. And every one of them is worth your time.